outside of the outer bladder line, you've got the gallbladder channel. And the gallbladder channel is kind of zigzagging around out here, right? Between anterior and posterior locations. It's zigzagging back and forth as it does throughout the body between the anterior and the posterior. And running right on the side of the body, you have the line which incorporates the Dabao, the great lobe of the spleen on the side of the body, and the Daimai, and this, what's that called? The Dalor, the Baomai, I forget. But anyway, you've got these energies right on the side of the body. No, that's not an extra channel. It's something that's very obscure. Don't worry about it. So I'm going to just go through a little bit some of the significance of these lines in relationship to consciousness. So, and the body, the physical body. So the back shu line, the inner bladder channel line that we're dealing with mostly, relates to the movement of energy from the chi body in and out of the physical body. And that makes sense that it does that because all of acupuncture is based on the chi body. It's based on examining the chi in relation to the physical body, which, believe me, was a fairly new idea 2,500 years ago. 2,500 years ago, people were mainly working with the Shen and the Ling, the spiritual realms, in order to perform healing. They were mainly performing exorcistic healing and spiritual healing. At least I think they were. And the Neijing is actually an attempt to move away from that, to move away from all the drums and all the drama and to move into working with a different system. So the system the Neijing wants to work with, which is what all acupuncture is based on, is the chi body. So naturally, in our medical system, we place most emphasis on this line of the bladder channel, which corresponds to the chi body. But we know from the function and the utilization of the outer bladder line points that this has got to correspond at least to the Shen body, right? So we can kind of do a little schemata here, which is chi for the inner bladder line and Shen for the outer bladder line. And then we can actually kind of extend this a bit more. I think a lot of modern acupuncturists in China like to use the Huatou Jiaji line because they feel it is more connected to the nervous system itself. So the inner bladder line is going to be right on the high point of the paraspinal muscle. The Huatou Jiaji line is going to be that groove right next to your spine. And many modern acupuncturists are using these points along this groove, along with maybe the back shu points or not, to access the physical and nervous system aspects of the body. So I'm going to suggest to you that the inner line here, the Huatou Jiaji line, corresponds to the sort of interface between the chi and the physical, corresponds therefore to the nervous system, corresponds a little bit to maybe more to the jing too. Whereas the inner bladder line is your chi line, the outer bladder line is the Shen line. So then what of the gallbladder channel that's kind of zigzagging around back and forth here, and what about that outermost side layer, if we were to look at the striations on the back? Well, the gallbladder typically, in the thinking of a lot of different traditions, corresponds to the spiritual realm, the Ling realm. The gallbladder channel traverses the distance from your outermost body, your Ling body, all the way down into your physical body. So we see that evidenced in a lot of different ideas and traditions. For example, it says in the Neijing, and it's one of these mysterious statements, the gallbladder strikes right to the middle. And that's actually how the characters pretty much describe it. It strikes to the middle. There's a few ways you can think about that. You can think about that as that the physical gallbladder's bile comes in towards the midline of the body. But it's probably not that simple, because the Neijing in the very next sentence goes on to say that all of the organs depend, therefore, upon the gallbladder, which is very interesting. Because from a Western anatomical point of view, we don't think of the gallbladder as being that important. Hey, let's take it out before we go on vacation. It's just not that important from a Western point of view. But of course, when we're talking about the gallbladder in Chinese medicine, we're talking about the gallbladder organ and energy system and channel. And so the gallbladder channel zigzags sort of around the side of the body, moving between front and back, kind of knitting together the body. And at the same time, it travels downwards. And it's often been associated with sudden enlightenment, for example, in certain Japanese traditions. It's been associated with increasing intelligence. For example, there are points on the gallbladder channel on the head that were used in China to turn children into prodigies, or to sort of encourage that potential. But at the same time, those points were hidden and contraindicated because they could also cause premature aging. Right? So there's an interesting idea of how the gallbladder forms this trajectory through life, you know, from sort of the very origins of life to the culmination of life, the enlightenment point. The gallbladder passes very, very specifically through the brain and has the function of being able to clear the brain and being able to stimulate the brain. And yet at the same time, the gallbladder is said to travel down to the marrow in the bones. And that's why the influential point of marrow, for example, is right on the gallbladder acupuncture channel. And marrow in Chinese thinking is that very central tissue in the body that is a fusion of your jing, your fundamental physical essence, and your consciousness. So the gallbladder has this trajectory that goes all the way through the subtle bodies, from the ling level, the spiritual body, through the shen, through the qi, down into the physical, very, very strongly down into the physical body. So I'm going to suggest that in the ordering of the channels on the back, we go from the sort of jing level to the qi body, to the shen body, to the ling body of the gallbladder. But what about that sidemost energy, which we see expressed, for example, in Da Bao, the great low of the spleen? Because that's another kind of energy. And that's the energy that I would argue also corresponds to the daimai, the furthest extent of daimai, off of the daimai points. And that, I would argue, corresponds to the spiritual body, or the Tao body. Okay, now you've got 5. 4 of them are actually bodies. Your physical body, your qi body, your shen body, and even your ling body, your spiritual body, have some aspect of being sort of anchored to your individuality. But your actual Tao body, your true sort of universal body, you might say, or Tao body, isn't personal in the same way at all. And so I'm going to suggest that in addition to having a mapping of the internal organs and the movement of energy through the evolutionary process that's vertical, you've got a horizontal mapping in the back that is actually moving from the most subtle down to the least subtle, and through the different gradations of energy that a human embodies. So then the whole spine forms a network. The whole back forms a grid, right? Because you've got one set of gradations coming inwards from outside and corresponding to the outermost energy bodies down to the innermost body in the physical body, and you've got another grid that is vertical, having to do with arrangements of evolutionary processes, and also the 5 elements, certainly in these ones. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about, because we're going to explore the lumbar spine and the sacrum a little bit.